On Christmas Eve, a single father took in a homeless mother and her kids. The town mocked him. He never let them go. The snow had been falling since morning. Not the loud kind, not the kind that announced itself with drama. This was the quiet winter snow, soft, persistent, patient, layering the town one breath at a time. Christmas Eve pressed down on the valley like a held prayer. Every window along Main Street glowed amber. Wreaths hung crooked on doors that had seen better years. Bells chimed from the church tower once an hour, dull and hollow in the cold, as if even sound didn't want to linger outside. Ethan Cole stood alone at the edge of his driveway, breath fogging in front of him, boots sinking into a snowbank he hadn't bothered to shovel yet. He was 39, a widower for 4 winters now, a father every single hour of every day since. Behind him, the house creaked, old wood adjusting to the cold. Light spilled from the kitchen window where his daughter Lucy stood on a chair, carefully lining up gingerbread men like soldiers preparing for something important. His son Noah sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, humming off-key, holding a broken candy cane like it was still useful. Ethan watched them for a moment longer than necessary. Then he heard it. Not the wind, not the snow. A sound that didn't belong to the night. Crying. He turned toward the road. The county highway curved just beyond the tree line, half buried, rarely traveled anymore. The town had grown inward over the years, afraid of what lay beyond familiar lights. Anyone walking that stretch in winter had either nowhere to go or nowhere left. The sound came again, softer this time, strangled by the cold. Ethan pulled his coat tighter and stepped forward. Each step felt heavier than the last. Snow creaked beneath his boots. The wind cut through the thin spaces in his gloves like it remembered him personally. And then he saw them. A woman stood near the ditch, bent forward as if the weight of the night itself had finally pushed her down. Her coat was too thin. Her scarf hung loose, unraveling. 2 children clung to her, one wrapped around her leg, the other slumped against her side, half asleep, cheeks red with cold. She looked up when Ethan approached. Her eyes were dark, wide, not startled, just exhausted past the point of fear. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, words tumbling out in a rush that fogged the air between them. I didn't mean to be here. We were just... The bus didn't come back. They said it would. I thought..." Her voice broke. The younger child whimpered, pressing his face into her coat. Ethan didn't answer right away. He took them in slowly, the frost on their lashes, the way the older child's shoes were duct-taped at the toes, the way the woman's hands shook even when she tried to still them. "You'll freeze out here," he said finally. His voice sounded rougher than he intended. She nodded like she already knew that part. "I'm Ethan," he added, unsure why names suddenly felt important. "Marisol," she said. Then softer, "These are my kids, Mateo and Sophia." The names settled into the snow between them. Ethan glanced back toward his house, toward the light, toward the life he had built out of routine and caution, and promises he made to himself after loss taught him how fragile warmth could be. He thought of the empty guest room, the extra blankets Lucy kept folded just in case. The way Christmas had felt hollow since his wife died, like a celebration missing its center. "You can come inside," he said. Marisol stiffened. "Just for the night," he added quickly. "Storm's not letting up. Kids shouldn't be out in this." She searched his face, not for kindness, but for danger. Years of learning how to measure men had sharpened her instincts. "I don't want trouble," she said. Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "Neither do I." Another pause. The wind filled it. Then she nodded once. Inside, warmth wrapped around them immediately. Lucy gasped softly when she saw the children. Noah stared, wide-eyed, like Christmas had arrived early in a way he hadn't expected. "Dad?" Lucy whispered. Not disapproving, just surprised. "Friends are staying the night," Ethan said. Marisol kept her coat on. So did the kids. They hovered near the door like guests afraid of overstaying something invisible. Hot cocoa appeared without discussion. Blankets followed. Shoes were gently taken, no questions asked. But word travels fast in a small town, especially on Christmas Eve. By the time the snow slowed and the church bells rang again, someone had already seen the light stay on too long. Someone had already noticed shapes in Ethan's windows that didn't belong to his usual quiet life. By morning, they would talk. They always did. And they would say he was foolish, soft, naive. They would say a single father had no business bringing strangers home, especially that kind. But that night, as Matteo finally fell asleep on the couch and Sophia whispered shy thanks into Lucy's hair, Ethan felt something shift inside him. Not bravery, responsibility, the kind that doesn't ask permission. Outside, the snow kept falling, and without knowing it yet, the town had already decided who Ethan Cole would become to them. He just hadn't decided whether he cared. Morning came slowly, not with sunlight. Winter didn't give that easily, but with sound. The furnace kicked on with a tired groan. Snow slid from the roof in heavy sheets. Somewhere down the road, a truck engine coughed to life and died again. Ethan woke before his alarm. He lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening. The house felt different, too full, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and padded down the hallway. The guest room door was open. Marisol sat on the edge of the mattress, already awake, coat folded neatly beside her. Sophia slept curled against her hip, thumb in her mouth. Matteo lay crosswise at the foot of the bed, one sock missing, hair sticking up in defiance of gravity. Marisol looked up when Ethan appeared. "I can make breakfast," she said immediately, standing too fast. "I don't want to." "Sit," Ethan said gently. She hesitated, then obeyed. He moved through the kitchen on instinct. Coffee, toast, scrambled eggs. The motions grounded him, gave his hands something to do while his mind caught up. Lucy and Noah emerged next, rubbing sleep from their eyes. "Are they staying?" Noah asked bluntly. "For breakfast," Ethan said. Lucy smiled, already pulling plates from the cupboard. Outside, the town woke up, and with it came the looks. By the time Ethan shoveled the driveway, Mrs. Hanley from across the street had already paused twice with her trash bin, pretending to struggle with the lid while watching his house. A pickup slowed as it passed. Someone waved, too stiff to be friendly. When Ethan turned back toward the porch, Marisol stood just inside the doorway, watching through the glass. "You don't have to explain us," she said quietly. "I know," Ethan replied. But he also knew he wouldn't. Breakfast was simple, awkward at first, then softer. Matteo laughed when Noah taught him a card trick that didn't actually work. Sophia helped Lucy frost the gingerbread men that had survived the night. Marisol watched it all like someone witnessing a life she hadn't believed was possible anymore. When the plates were cleared, Ethan leaned against the counter. "The storm passed," he said. "Roads should be open by noon." Marisol nodded, too quickly. "We'll go then." The words landed heavier than they should have. Ethan looked at the kids, at the color slowly returning to their faces, at the way they fit into the room like they'd always been meant to sit there. "You don't have anywhere warm, do you?" he asked. Marisol didn't answer right away. Finally she shook her head. "Not anymore." That was all she said, but it was enough. By afternoon, the town had decided. At Miller's grocery, voices dropped when Ethan walked in. At the gas station, someone muttered something about charity cases under their breath. The cashier avoided his eyes. When Ethan returned home, he found a note taped to his door. "Be careful who you bring around your kids." No signature. There never was. He crumpled it in his fist. Inside, Marisol was folding blankets, methodical, preparing. "You don't have to rush," Ethan said. She smiled sadly. "I always do." That night, snow began again, thicker this time, heavier, the kind that erased roads and options alike. The power flickered once, twice, then went out. Lucy gasped. Noah whooped like it was an adventure. Ethan lit candles, their small flames casting long shadows on the walls. The house shrank into warmth and darkness. They ate dinner by candlelight. Soup stretched further than it should have. Laughter came easier than expected. Later, after the kids fell asleep in a tangle of blankets and borrowed pillows, Ethan and Marisol sat at the kitchen table. The silence between them wasn't empty. "You don't owe us anything," Marisol said. "I know what people will say." "They'll talk whether you're here or not," Ethan replied. "They always do." She studied him. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan thought of his wife, of the hospital room, of the promise he made to raise his kids in a world where kindness wasn't conditional. "Because it's cold," he said simply. Marisol exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding something back for years. That night, the town slept with its judgments. Ethan's house slept with 4 children under its roof, and winter pressed closer, testing how much warmth a single choice could hold. The first week passed like that, quiet on the surface, heavy underneath. Snow became routine. The roads stayed half open, half forgiving. Winter didn't rush anyone in this town. It waited, watched. Marisol stayed. Not because Ethan asked her to, because leaving meant stepping back into the cold with 2 children and no promises. She cleaned when she woke up early, cooked when Ethan came home late. Not out of obligation, but habit. Survival had taught her to be useful before she was welcome. Lucy noticed first. "You don't have to do that," she told Marisol one afternoon, watching her scrub an already clean counter. Marisol smiled softly. "I know. It just helps me breathe." Lucy nodded like she understood more than she should. The kids blended faster than the adults. Mateo followed Noah everywhere like a shadow. Sophia braided Lucy's hair with the seriousness of a professional. Laughter returned to the house in pockets, unexpected, warm, startling. Outside, the town hardened. Someone accidentally left a shopping cart blocking Ethan's truck at the grocery store. A man at the hardware store asked too loudly if Ethan was running a shelter now. A woman from church stopped inviting Lucy to sit with her usual friends. Ethan said nothing, but he felt it. Every look carried weight. Every silence had edges. One evening, as Ethan chopped wood in the fading light, he heard boots crunch behind him. Tom Wilkes stood at the edge of the yard, hands shoved into his jacket pockets. He'd grown up with Ethan, played football together, shared beers after graduation before life split them into different shapes. "Cold out," Tom said. "Winter," Ethan replied. Tom glanced toward the house. Light glowed in the windows. Laughter leaked out through thin walls. "You planning on keeping them?" Tom asked. Ethan straightened slowly. "You asking as a friend or as a town representative?" Tom winced. "I'm just saying. People are talking. They always are." Tom hesitated. "You've got kids." "So does she." That ended it. Tom left without another word. That night, Marisol found Ethan sitting alone on the back steps, breath fogging, shoulders tight. "They don't like us," she said quietly. Ethan didn't look at her. "They don't like what they don't understand." She wrapped her arms around herself. "You're paying for it. I made the choice." She sat beside him anyway. For a long moment they watched snow fall into darkness. "I wasn't always like this," Marisol said suddenly. Ethan waited. "I had a job, an apartment, a plan." Her voice wavered. "Then my husband got sick. Insurance ran out. He died faster than the bills." She swallowed. "I thought if I kept moving we'd be okay, that I could outrun it." She laughed softly, no humor in it. "Turns out grief walks faster than you think." Ethan nodded once. He understood grief, knew how it lingered, how it slept beside you and woke before you did. "You can stay," he said quietly, "as long as you need." She looked at him then, really looked. "You don't know how long that could be." "I do." Winter deepened. Snowbanks rose like walls. Days shortened. The house became its own small world, shared chores, shared meals, shared silence. And slowly, something dangerous happened. It started feeling normal. That was when the town pushed back harder. The school called, concerns, disruptions, questions about temporary arrangements. The church elder stopped Ethan after service. "Charity is admirable," he said carefully, "but boundaries matter." Ethan didn't argue, didn't defend. He just went home. That night, Marisol cried for the first time since arriving. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. In the laundry room, folding clothes that weren't hers. Ethan stood in the doorway, unsure whether to speak. "I don't want to ruin this," she whispered. "For your kids." "You're not," he said. "But they think I am." He crossed the room then, slowly, carefully. "You didn't take anything from me," he said. "You didn't steal space. You filled it." She broke. Sobs racked her shoulders, sharp and sudden. She covered her mouth, ashamed of the sound. Ethan didn't fix it. He stayed. Outside, winter pressed its face to the glass. Inside, two people learned how to share warmth without promising forever. Yet, the town watched, waiting, and winter, relentless, patient, waited too. The storm that finally broke the town came without warning. Not snow this time, but ice. Freezing rain slicked the roads overnight, sealing driveways shut and turning sidewalks into traps. By morning, power lines sagged under the weight. Trees cracked like gunshots in the distance. Winter reminded everyone who was in charge. Ethan woke to silence. No furnace, no hum, no lights. He pulled on his boots and stepped into the hallway. The house was dim, breath visible in the air. The kids were still asleep, bundled tight. Marisol was already up, lighting candles with practiced calm. "We'll need to keep everyone in one room," she said quietly. "Body heat helps." Ethan nodded. They moved mattresses into the living room, built a small nest of blankets and coats. The fireplace hadn't been used in years, but Ethan cleaned it out anyway, hands blackened with soot, breath shallow with effort. When the fire finally caught, it felt like a small miracle. By noon, the roads were impassable. Phones buzzed with alerts. School canceled. Stores closed. The town retreated behind doors and judgments. By evening, someone knocked. Ethan stiffened. He opened the door to find Mrs. Hanley, wrapped in a shawl, face pale, eyes frightened. "My heat's gone," she said, "and my phone died." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Come in." She stepped inside, startled by the sight. The kids, Marisol, the warmth. Her gaze lingered on Marisol, then softened, just a fraction. "I didn't know," she murmured. "No one ever does," Marisol replied gently. More knocks came after that. A family down the road, an older couple, someone with a toddler and nowhere warm to go. Ethan's house filled again. Soup was stretched thinner, blankets shared, the fire fed constantly. No one talked about why they were there, no one mentioned rumors. Survival stripped things down to what mattered. Late that night, as the fire burned low and the last guest slept curled near the hearth, Ethan stood at the window. Snow fell again, slow, quiet, relentless. Marisol joined him. "You didn't have to let them in," she said. Ethan smiled faintly. "Neither did I let you." She leaned her head against his shoulder. Outside, the town finally saw what warmth looked like. Not charity, community. Morning came with help, plows, generators, apologies that sounded awkward but sincere. The church elder stopped by with supplies and wouldn't meet Marisol's eyes, but he thanked her anyway. Someone shoveled Ethan's driveway without being asked. Change came quietly, the way winter always did. That night, after the house emptied again, after the kids slept, Ethan and Marisol sat by the dying fire. "You could leave now," he said softly. "No one would stop you." She shook her head. "I don't want to." He met her gaze. Something unspoken passed between them. Not romance, not promises. Belonging. Outside, winter loosened its grip, just enough to let spring dream. But Ethan knew one thing for certain. He never let them go. Not when it was hard. Not when it cost him. Not when the town mocked him. Because some winters aren't meant to be survived alone. They're meant to be shared. Winter did not leave all at once. It loosened its grip the way grief did. Slowly, unevenly, pretending not to notice the damage it had already done. Snowbanks shrank into gray slush along the roads. Icicles thinned, then fell in quiet crashes from eaves. The town exhaled, cautious, as if afraid that breathing too deeply might bring the cold back. Life resumed, but it did not return to what it had been. At school, Lucy was invited back into circles that had once closed around her. Noah came home one afternoon talking about how Mateo had been picked first in gym, like it was a victory that mattered. Ethan listened from the sink, hands wet with dishwater, heart unexpectedly full. Marisol found work. It wasn't glamorous. A few shifts a week at the bakery on Main Street. Early mornings, cold hands, flour-dusted sleeves. But she came home smelling like bread and sugar instead of exhaustion, and that alone felt like a beginning. The owner, a woman who had once crossed the street to avoid Ethan, paid her in cash and didn't ask questions. Winter had softened people. Or maybe it had simply exposed what they could no longer justify ignoring. One afternoon, Ethan came home to find Marisol standing in the living room, holding an envelope. "What's that?" he asked. She hesitated. "A letter. From the county, housing assistance, temporary placement, a small apartment on the edge of town. Nothing special, but warm, separate, official." She held it like it might burn her. "You don't have to take it," Ethan said carefully. "I know." The kids hovered nearby, pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. That night, after they were asleep, Ethan and Marisol sat at the kitchen table again, where so many things had been said without being spoken. "You could stay," Ethan said. "Here." Marisol traced the rim of her mug. "And what would that make me?" "Family," he said without thinking. The word surprised them both. Silence stretched. Not uncomfortable, just honest. "I've lived my whole life being temporary," she said quietly. "Places, people, kindness." She looked up at him. "I don't know how to stay without feeling like I'm stealing something." Ethan leaned back, exhaled. "When my wife died," he said, "I thought loving again would mean replacing her, or betraying her. So I decided we'd just survive." He gestured around the house. "Then you showed up, and suddenly survival felt small." Marisol's eyes shone, but she didn't cry. "I don't want to leave," she said, "but I don't want to hurt you." "You won't," he replied. They sat there until the fire burned low. In the morning, the kids found the letter folded neatly on the counter, untouched. Spring tried to arrive in pieces. Mud replaced snow. Buds appeared tentative and unsure. The river swelled with meltwater, loud and alive. Ethan fixed the fence. Marisol planted herbs by the window. The kids counted days, not by calendars, but by how long they could stay outside without gloves. One Sunday, the church bell rang and rang. Not for service, for fire. A house on the far side of town caught late at night. Old wiring, dry wood, too much wind. By the time help arrived, there was nothing left but smoke and shock. Ethan recognized the family immediately. They'd stayed in his living room during the ice storm. Without thinking, he grabbed coats, blankets, keys. The car filled again. This time no one questioned it. Neighbors brought food. Someone dropped off toys. The bakery sent bread without being asked. Marisol moved through it all like she had been waiting for this moment her whole life. Not the tragedy, but the response. Later that night, as the fire trucks left and the house filled with quiet again, the woman whose home had burned clasped Marisol's hands. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. Marisol shook her head gently. "You don't. You just stay warm." Ethan watched from the doorway. That was when he understood. This wasn't charity anymore. It was who they were. Winter returned one last time that year. A late March snow. Unexpected, brief, almost gentle. Ethan stood on the porch, watching it fall, when Marisol joined him. She leaned into his side without asking. He didn't move away. "Do you remember the first night?" she asked. He nodded. "You were freezing. I was afraid you'd regret it by morning." He smiled faintly. "I was afraid I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't open the door." She turned to him then, fully. No fear in her eyes now. "Ethan," she said, "I'm tired of leaving." He took her hands. Calloused, warm. "Then stay," he said. "Not because you need to, because you want to." The snow fell between them. Somewhere inside, the kids laughed. By summer, no one talked about the night the town mocked him. They talked about the winter when one house stayed warm, when doors stayed open, when a single father made a choice and didn't let go. Not of them, not of love, not of what mattered. Because some winters don't end when the snow melts. They end when people finally choose each other. The following winter came quieter. Not easier, but kinder. Snow returned the way memory does, softly, without urgency, touching things it once hurt and leaving them intact. The house still creaked in the cold. The wind still pressed its palm to the windows at night. But now, there were more coats on the hooks, more boots by the door, more reasons to keep the fire fed. Marisol stayed, not as a guest, not as someone waiting to be asked to leave. She stayed because the house had learned her name. One evening, close to Christmas again, Ethan stood in the kitchen watching her help Sophia roll dough while Lucy read aloud from the couch, and Noah argued with Mateo about whose turn it was to feed the dog. The scene felt ordinary, and that was the miracle of it. Ethan stepped outside for a moment. Snow fell in thin, patient lines. The town glowed softly, no longer sharp around the edges. Somewhere down the street, laughter drifted from another open door. He thought about the man he had been a year ago, careful, closed, surviving instead of living. Behind him, the door opened. Marisol joined him, wrapping a scarf around her neck, then around his wrist without thinking. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Just grateful." She smiled, the kind that didn't ask for anything. Inside, warmth waited. The town never apologized outright. It didn't need to. It showed up now. Shoveled sidewalks, shared food, learned names, and every Christmas Eve after that, Ethan left the porch light on all night, just in case someone else was out there, cold, afraid, and listening for proof that kindness still lived somewhere warm. Because once, he opened a door, and winter never owned him again.